Alright everyone, we're on to the last step of preparing your button art, and that is of course cutting out the buttons. I have two rotary tools next to me and I will lay out the pros and the cons of each. So first off, you're going to start with this AFLA rotary tool. I guess we'll start with the pros. So this one is cheaper, right? This one I think retails for about $11 on Amazon when I bought it. It's really flat. Mostly it's pretty small, it's easy to transport. It comes with a case to cover the blade, so if you pull this off, the blade is exposed. And the initial setup is pretty easy. All you have to do is twist this and then slide it back and forth to get your desired diameter. I am not going to do that because I don't want to mess up what I have right now, because this is exactly where it needs to be. But in terms of cons, it is a bit difficult to use accurately. That's a con that's for both of these rotary tools. It is a little bit difficult to use them with like 100% accuracy. It's possible, but it's difficult. And this rotary tool actually comes with a stopper, or I call it a stopper. I actually don't know what the actual name of this thing is, but you can see it has a lot of wear and tear, because obviously the needle that helps you, help center the rotary tool, helps you to cut, is very, very sharp. Like, this thing is super sharp and it pierces through paper super easy. And believe me, I have tried to stack a whole bunch of cardboard, a whole bunch of paper. Unless you have something that's really, really hard and plastically like this will poke through the center of your drawings, and they are too noticeable for you to use in an actual button, because I just wanted to test it out and try it. So don't lose this. Like, don't lose this, or hopefully you can, create an alternative, but it is very difficult. And the last thing, this thing has a really high margin of error. And what I mean by that is, margin of error is essentially when I'm cutting out the circle and I mess it up too much for it to be used in an actual button, or it'll have to be something that is sold at like heavily discounted. The margin of error of this thing is actually pretty high. I typically, as you saw earlier, the button sheet has 9 buttons on each of them, and I normally just print 2. Because my initial plans is to normally stock 10 at a time, and I'm trying to think, maybe out of every like 3, there's always about 1. There's like 1 or 2 that I mess up. And obviously sometimes I can have like a really good streak and not mess up any, or I can have a really bad streak and mess up like 3 in a row. So yeah, the margin of error of this one is a little bit, it's a little bit higher, but it's also at a cheaper price. So I'm not really surprised. So next we're going to go on to the NT circle cutter. This circle cutter is a Japanese brand. Like the AFLA circle cutter, it does come with blades. You can see them down here. That red thing is a cover for the blade. Which I think if it'll focus. Yeah, the blade is right there. This whole entire thing is a blade, and this is to cover it so you don't, stab yourself while you're trying to use this. And one thing I didn't mention with the AFLA circle cutter is the paper doesn't need to be cut in order to use it. With this one, just because when I demonstrate how to use it, you'll see why. The paper needs to be cut in order to use this one, so you can spin your work area around. With this one, because when it rotates, you don't have to cut your paper into small pieces. You can if you want, and if you are going to cut it, tape it down, but you don't have to cut it. You can print with, you can cut with a full printed button sheet. And this also has a lower margin of error, but it is still difficult. Like I said, it's still difficult to get 100% accuracy, but this one has such a low margin of error. So for example, right, this piece of paper is actually cut with this new circle cutter. I was testing it out, trying to figure out how it works. A couple of my first cuts, as you can see, there's this nice, there's a little white line at the bottom of it. This one also has kind of a thicker white line. These can still be used. These can still be used in your art because they still measure 7 centimeters across, so they'll still fit. And your button making parts, they'll be slightly off center, and I say this like slightly off center just because of the edge, but it's not something that's noticeable at all, versus the margin of error with this one, where you can kind of rip through the entire paper or accidentally cut at a very wrong angle. So even though it's not 100% perfect, you can still use these. These can still be used. This one is more expensive. It is $16, I believe it retails on Amazon. The initial setup is hard. I did have to look up a tutorial on how to use this. I did not have to do that for the AFLA, but for this one I did, and I will link that tutorial down in the description so you guys can see it. It's a very well made, very well put together tutorial. It's super easy to follow, but you still need a tutorial in order to figure out how to fix it. And so I guess I'm gonna demonstrate how to use these. So in order to get this centered using this rotary tool, kind of guesstimate where you think the center is. Place, obviously the metal part, right? And what I like to do is I like to touch, like on this side, it looks about centered. Then I like to do it at the top. It's kind of hard to see, but it's not centered. It's not right on the edge. So you just kind of push it up a little bit until it's aligned with the edge of the button art. And see, like now it's a little bit too low. So you kind of just scoot this around in the middle and just check all 4 corners of the button art in order to make sure that, if it cuts from point to point, then you're gonna get a nice straight line. So in order to cut this, you don't want to press down too hard, but do remember that it is kind of hard to accurately do multiple passes, so you don't want to press down too soft either, which is once again like a learning curve of having to use this. So you just press it, and I personally I have a really small cutting mat because it's easy to rotate it, and as you can see, it kind of buckles. So definitely do be careful with that. Kind of just let the paper tension go when it starts to do that, because it does that a lot. And just spin it. And I think I messed it up. Alright, we're gonna go back over it. Yeah, I think I messed this one up. See what I mean? The margin of error is really high because you gotta try and keep it centered and trying to go back some of the parts that you may have missed. It's just because like the buckling, and I've even tried to tape it down to see if the buckling would stop, and it doesn't. So yeah, I'm gonna have to bend it on, whoops. Kind of bend it to rip it off. Eek. Yeah, so you can still use this even with the flyaways on it because it won't mess it up, but you can see, right? This little part kind of got nicked. Sometimes if that happens, I kind of just use the scissors to cut some of this extra stuff off. But yeah, that was definitely a less than stellar cut. Honestly, let's see if we can try that again real quick. Like I said, the margin of error on this thing is it's pretty high. Like, it's completely doable to cut these out because I've done about 30 buttons in a row cutting them out, but it takes a little bit longer, a little bit difficult to get accurate. And it does take a learning curve. If you need to, I definitely recommend printing out the template and then just practicing. Definitely want to adjust your pressure. I think I was holding on to it a little. I think I was pressing down a little bit too tight the first time I did it. So Come on. Okay. All right. Yep, I got it. Okay. So there's a little bit of leftover paper. I'm gonna chop that off. Boom, bam. See? There we go. See? I think I was pressing a little bit too hard with this one while I was spinning it, but this one came out perfect. Actually, this one came out very, very good. There's only like a little bit. Trying to see if it'll focus. Yeah, just like a little bit of it cut off. Not anything super noticeable, but yeah. Here, let me see if I can demonstrate that one more time for you guys. Okay. Place it as close to the center as you can. Then adjust at all 4 corners. Yeah, see, like this is a little bit too high. All right, and then, you know, kind of place your thumb on it to hold the paper still. But then also, because my paper cutter, or my cutting mat is so little, I can put my hands on the edge of it, just spin it around. And there you go. Yeah, just kind of bend some of the parts that maybe didn't cut out all the way. You definitely do have to have a much lighter hand with this one. I definitely was going a little bit too hard earlier with the very first one that I did. Come on. But it's also, like I said, it's not super accurate when you try to recut. So there we go. And then kind of get off some of the shavings if they bother you. All right, see? So we have two ones that are cut very well, one that's not. So that's my typical margin of error. Out of 3, I typically have one that just gets messed up beyond repair. And so next we are going to use the NT circle cutter, which I personally think is a lot easier to use. But the once again, it's a little bit hard to get it 100% accurate. But luckily, we have a centering gauge. I can center it on my own, but it's much more accurate if I use the gauge in order to center it. So we'll just do this one right here. Like I said, you don't have to cut the circle pictures into small pieces if you don't want to. If you do, make sure you tape them down onto your cutting mat, because the paper does slide around a lot when you use this one. So as long as you have a good grip on the paper, you'll be fine. Well, here, first of all, let me put the pieces back together on this one. I don't want to lose this stopper right here, like I said before. So, luckily for us, buttons that are 2.25 inches, the template is 2.75 inches, and that's more or less 7 centimeters. It's technically 6.985, but literally if you round up from the 3rd decimal, it goes all the way up to 7, so there you go. And the problem, I think one of the biggest problems about this circle cutter is that it doesn't have half sizes. It only goes by whole numbers. Luckily for us, if you are doing this button size, you don't have to worry about it because you do have 7. And a big thing I want to note, I am going to link all of my button templates into a Google Drive folder for you guys to download and use. Don't print this sheet through Google Drive. You have to download it into Microsoft Word and then print it from there, because for some reason Google Drive shrinks the image and it makes these slightly too small. Your art will be too small to use, or so don't print directly from Google Drive. I mean, you'll have to download this anyway in order to put your actual button art on it, but if you just want to test out the templates, download it first and print it through Microsoft Word. So it is much easier, I think, to place it sideways instead of trying to place it back this way and pull it from behind or pull it from the front. But also just because my confined recording and desk space, but we are going to center it. And you can get a pretty good center. You can see the black line, you know, where it is. 7 centimeter area, and then you're gonna hold that down. You don't want it to slide. Whoops. Well, yeah, you are gonna just drop it onto it, and make sure that the blade is resting in like this little gauge right here, because you won't be able to pull it out from underneath if it's not. And then this circle part fits perfectly. If I can get it. I can get it in there. Yeah, it fits perfectly. So we're gonna press down the middle button and then just slide it out. There is an arrow in what direction to turn right here. I'm not sure if it's picking up on camera. It's right there. And then you're gonna want to place your hand on the paper, or place some kind of pressure on the paper so it doesn't slide. And then you're just gonna rotate. You can definitely rotate several times. Oh, and I think I messed it up. Well, to say, you can rotate several times, and it slid. This would have came out perfect had I not slid. All right, let's try that again. Boink. All right, we're going to center it like so. All right, and then I'm just gonna drop that in there, press down the button, slide it out. I can't hold it down with my right hand and turn. I have to hold it down with my left hand and turn. You do have to consider, when pressing down the middle, you have to put down a considerable amount of force. All right. Bam, there you go. See? There's a really tiny white edge on one side, a little bit less black on the other. Like I said, it's kind of oddly difficult. I think just because these are ever so microscopically slightly smaller than the gauge, that might be why. But it is the best way. Well, here, honestly, let me try. And just because like the area, you can kind of see, it's just kind of, I can't see exactly where the blade is, which is what my main problem is with cutting it freehand. I guess if I can rotate it, I can see the blade when I'm looking through, but it's really hard to get it on camera. I don't know, there's really no way to know if it's like centered well or not. Let's just try it. Did I get it? Oh, yeah, I kind of did. Would you look at that? Yeah, I feel like that was a fluke. But either way, I think it is a lot easier to use the nice clear center gauge in order to cut these out. I definitely also recommend practicing. You definitely want to practice when cutting this stuff out. Like, I mean, yeah, see, another margin of error. But that is pretty much it in terms of rotary tools. These are incredibly cheap and affordable options in order to use these, because obviously Badge a Minute and Dr. Don's, I believe, sell one of those really big like circle cutters with a lever like the press down, and Dr. Don's also does sell a circle tool like this one, but both of those things are over $100. So eventually, once you know I can actually make up the cost of both of those items, I would definitely recommend switching to one of those circle cutters that has a lever. But until then, I definitely would recommend going with the NT circle cutter. Yeah, it's kind of big and bulky and a little bit hard to travel with if you're going to like a convention or something, but it's much easier to use spot on than this one is to use. This one definitely requires a lot of concentration, requires a lot of awkward workarounds, because like I know initially when you use it, you should just be able to like spin it around like that. I have not had any success with doing it that way. For me, it's been really difficult, but some people, if you're just cutting out circles that you don't need to be precise, then that's fine. But I need my circles to be precise, obviously, because there's artwork in the middle of it. So I definitely recommend going with this one if you want to have a lower margin of error, and if you just don't mind having ever so slight white borders on certain parts. But if you definitely just want a really good cut that might take a couple of tries, then go with the Afla. They're only $5 apart, right? This one is 11, this one is 16. So just, you know, try them both, try one or the other. Both of them work. Both of them are really good affordable rotary tools that can also, you can customize the diameter for the both of these. So if you have different button sizes that you're making, you don't have to get a new entire circle cutter. You just have one that's adjustable. Hey everyone, future editing Michaela here. Sorry about the weirdness of this part of the tutorial. I did plan on filming the whole entire button art tutorial in one go, and it ended up being an hour long, so I couldn't do that, obviously. So sorry about not saying hi at the beginning of the video, but here I am now. I just want to thank you guys so much for watching this video. I know it's a little bit long, but I promise the next part of the tutorial will be much shorter. So until then, I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye guys.